Greetings, greetings. Apologies, there has been some connection issues, so this is Sister Jendayi from the African Emancipation Day Reparations March Committee, and we're about to go live, all being well, ancestors willing. So please bear with us. Sister Esther will be joining us soon, and hopefully you will be too.
Greetings, I'm here.
Greetings. I must apologize to everyone who was on the stream before. I really don't know what happened. Internet playing silly beggars as usual. So just gonna wait a few minutes for people to join, and in the meantime also do a couple of announcements while we are waiting for people to come into the room. So please just bear with us. Greetings to those of you who have joined thus far. So now YouTube is telling me it wants me to do something else that I don't normally do. So I don't know why it wants me to do that. So I am just, while we are here waiting, I'm going to re-promote Ubuntu Dunia TV on YouTube, which I would encourage everyone to join and subscribe to. Ubuntu Dunia are also on Instagram. They do promote the internationalist work that the Stop the Mangamesia and others are involved in terms of the international social movement for African reparations. And this is the trailer for this year's African Emancipation Day Pan-African Reparations Rebellion Groundings, which is on Ubuntu Dunia TV on YouTube.
African Emancipation Day 2022 Pan-African Reparations Rebellion Groundings. Come and join us on the 1st of Mosiah, August 2022 for African Emancipation Day in Brixton. This year's theme, Sank for Agro, edutainment in our reparatory justice preparations for planet repair. The call to African emancipation continues. Over 1 million people marched in Sudan for national liberation and sovereignty. We rallied and demonstrated in Nigeria, and a growing refusal to stand by Western-backed corruption from Nigeria across West Africa has led to mass mobilizations of the people in Mali, standing behind President Assimi Goïta for national sovereignty, saying no to Western intervention. And we've seen multiple demonstrations bring Ghana to a halt over the e-levy over corruption from groups like Fix the Country and Arise Ghana. And we are now seeing the results of our grassroots struggle for African emancipation with the election of the first African vice president, Francia Marquez, in Colombia, alongside the first progressive government in the country's history, showing that our struggle is winning and it can achieve the results that we need. And so this year's theme in our nation building project is Sanko for Agro, edutainment in our Pan-African reparatory justice journey for planet repairs.
Because we sing the songs that were sang by those who came before us. They were
were not haters, they were liberators. And their songs still have a place today. A lot of the younger generation in the struggle, we sing the songs those who came before us sang to put ourselves in the position they were for. And like we said, our songs are not in any way meant to engage in any literal engagement. They are songs for that purpose of the revolution.
So if you want to see that trailer not in mirror image on my screen, you are invited to go on to Ubuntu Dunia TV on YouTube and subscribe. You can also follow them here on Instagram. Just to welcome those who have joined us while we were showing that trailer. And it's important that we show that trailer because Ubuntu Dunia TV as an independent TV station is profiling the internationalist solidarity and campaigning resistance work that the Stop the Maangamizi, We Charge Genocide, Ecocide campaign and others are involved in across continents. So it's important for us to contextualize our work as an African and African diaspora campaign and mission. And so we have as usual, our two organizing structures this year, the African Emancipation Day Reparations March Committee in partnership with the Stop the Maangamizi, We Charge Genocide, Ecocide campaign. We also have a third organizing partner this year, which is the Global African Reparations Forum of London, otherwise known as GARFOL. And they are involved in local, national and international work around reparations, and at a local level are engaging with Lambeth on the Atonement and Reparations motion passed in that borough in July 2020, have been working with African Connections Consortium in Bristol alongside the Stop the Maangamizi campaign, and as you know, in Bristol they passed an Atonement and Reparations motion March the 2nd, 2021. So we have reparations motions passed in Lambeth, Islington and Bristol. And it's important because those give us leverage and they form a part of an accountability that these structures have. So we are here and it's important that we played that trailer because it's also consistent with our theme for this year, Sankofa Agro, and Sankofa Agro is a compound of two words. Sankofa, go back and fetch, retrieving the past is no taboo. And we also have Agro, which is also a Shanti tree, or Asante tree, I should say. And it means play or entertain. And so that is really the vehicle with this youth-led aspect this year that we are elevating. That is really the vehicle by which we're going to be promoting our messages of resistance and showcasing the internationalist work that we have been doing around reparatory justice in our mission to secure holistic planet repairs. And by that, we mean reparatory justice, environmental justice, and cognitive justice collectively as planet repairs. And I will ask Sister Esther to explain that, break it down for us a little bit later. Hopefully the connection would be good this round. And I give thanks and praise to our Creator, known through many names and expressed through many natures, and the divine forces of the ancestral realm for their resilience and their sacrifice, their wisdom, their courage, their intellect, their scholarship, and ask those ancestors to join us today in this Instagram Live. So, yes, we have the 9th African Emancipation Day on the 1st of Mosiah. Obviously, those listening in will know Mosiah is the month of August, named so after our eminent prophet and king, Marcus Mosiah Garvey. And so before we go into the 3 questions that are the focal point of some elements of this year's Pan-African Reparations Rebellion Groundings, I'm going to invite Sister Esther as the spokesperson of the African Emancipation Day Reparations March Committee and also Coordinator General of the Stop the Mangamizi campaign, to just explain to us about the purpose of this gathering, okay, because it is a protest, it is a demonstration, it's not just an event, and explain really why there's been a change in tactic since 2020 in terms of the march we did before then.
Sure. So
to Parliament Square. Sorry.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Giving thanks. Greetings, Sister Jendayi, and everyone who has joined us. So to begin, the African Emancipation Day Reparations March, although the first march was in 2014, it wasn't named that until 2015. And we did do that march in between 2015 and 2019, as you've already stated. Now, for those that have been familiar with these marches, you will know hopefully that there were aims to the reparations march. There were 5 key aims, and the aims were a lot to do with championing resistance around reparations today, and also challenging establishment power with our growing grassroots power to be the change and effect the reparatory justice changes we wanted to see, as well as stuff like showcasing our own community self-repairs endeavours, because it's not like we're going with a begging bowl. We are actually being the change, but obviously are being denied resources to do our work effectively, and also lots of impediments, legal, political, economic and otherwise, that prevent us from being as effective. So after marching all this time, getting hardly any results, let's face it, we also used to hand in annually the Stop the Mangamizi We Charge Genocide Ecocide petition, calling for the establishment of the All-Party Parliamentary Commission of Inquiry for Truth and Reparatory Justice as what's called an administrative reparations mechanism. Because when people think about reparations settlements or policies or programs, they normally happen in 3 main ways. I'd say the first being revolution, all-out revolution, direct revolution, taking power, seizing government, seizing the means of production and all of that. Well, that's probably not going to happen anytime soon in the UK. The other 2 main mechanisms are court actions, lawsuits, okay, which have been very, very limited in their success. And you can't really have a lawsuit that is going to incorporate the perspectives and aspirations of the millions, in fact, billions of us that there are on the planet. Okay. Now, the other mechanism, which is the most common route, is what's known as instituting some type of commission of inquiry, truth commission, etc., which is an administrative mechanism where you can bring together many different voices, many different experts, people working on the solutions to the harms that affected communities have been experiencing. And that is the mechanism in a so-called liberal democracy, so-called, I'm using these terms that get used and bandied about. We all know how alienated we are, okay, from so-called democracy. But that is a mechanism that we felt we could gain the most support in terms of people power. Because ultimately, as movements, we are concerned with power, how we flex our power, how we build it, how we harness it, and how we use our power to influence others to stop using their power against us. If possible, doing it non-violently, but we all know that, you need the other sections. You need your army, you need your military, you need your defense and all of that. So in that vein, because we were not getting anywhere, we felt we needed to, nowhere fast, okay? Yeah, we'd come out, it'd be a great day for the family to come together, for people to see people they hadn't seen in a long time. But apart from that, no real taking us seriously on our demands, okay? So we felt it was important then to refocus the tactic around visibilizing our calls of repair, holistic repairs, to now looking at grounding with our people. Because it was very clear that even our own people were not able to get effectively on board. We're all going in different directions. Some people feel reparations are a waste of time and what have you. So we needed to be able to ground with our people around not only what we're proposing, but what are you doing? How are you contributing to the repair? How are you challenging power? How impactful is your work being? And let us do that collective ingathering as a community, but also look at how then do we influence where we are, okay? That is a key thing. And how do we then use that influence to impact wherever we are on the planet? And that's why we formed we evolved it into the Pan-African Reparations Rebellion Groundings. And rebellion is key, because we're not going anywhere on reparations without rebellion, and meaning to resist the status quo. That is a status quo of Mangamizi denial, of genocide, of ecocide, of social death for African people, of denial of our group rights and group interests, preventing us from accessing the resources that we need for repair. We cannot, collaborate and be complicit in a system that is denying us our right to be heard, and also denying us fully our ability and our capacity to actually do for self.
So there's two things there, sis, that I'm picking up on. One is about the dialogue, the groundings we need to have with ourselves to hold ourselves accountable, to make sure we are engaging in what we call Pempanze Mpango, reparations planning. It's not just about this is the state, these are the corporations, they owe us or they did that to us, they must be held accountable. That's part of it, but you can't do that challenge, as you have just said, without building power and building resources in order to do so. And those resources we will talk about later on. We'll be going to the three key questions today. And there's something in the chat around, has there been a shift from reparation justice to climate justice? And I think I just explained that we are talking about planet repairs, which includes a trinity or a triage of aspects. One is reparatory justice, the other is environmental justice, the other is cognitive justice. That's what we consider to be holistic repair. Could you expand on that?
Yeah, that's a really great question, actually. Thank you for asking it. So let me just elaborate. So the main purpose then of the PARG, as we call them, the Pan-African Reparations Rebellion Groundings, is to showcase our African heritage communities' repair initiatives, self-repair initiatives, locally, nationally and internationally, and to demonstrate that the achievement of the planet repairs as the nexus of reparatory, environmental and cognitive justice, which we see as being epitomized by the building of a repaired Africa, which is known as Ma'atu Buntu Man, in a repaired world, which we call Ubuntu Dunia. And we see that as the overarching goal of our holistic repair process as African people. That sense of building a nation, but we know that our nation exists in a world of disrepair. People got nuclear, starting wars all over the place, recolonizing Africa. So unless our repair process, which is a civilizational and world-making project, actually catalyzes the repair processes of others, then we are not guaranteed any kind of future in terms of non-repetition of the Mangamizi, through its three phases of chattel enslavement, colonialism, and neo-colonialism. So the question then around the shift in focus is not a shift in focus to climate justice, but what people will probably be picking up is that everywhere you are now hearing a lot of NGOs, even our own people, talk a lot more about climate reparations. they're trying to sort of forget that climate reparations is based on the holistic struggles of African and other indigenous peoples, because we've always been environmentalists, right? But the reason why there is that, prioritizing is because worldwide there is a global climate and ecological crisis, which is actually imperiling all life. Not just our Mother Earth, but our lives and all people's lives, and in particular, our lives as African people, because we're the ones who, when the hurricanes and the flood, the disasters hit, we get dispossessed, the so-called, what they would call migrant and refugee crisis, where people's own homelands are being made uninhabitable and ungovernable because of an unsustainable way of life that is a death style that has been exported around the world through colonialism. And our people do not having sufficient access to the resources of our own homeland, our own Mother Earth, to be able to adapt to this crisis, to be able to mitigate it, and actually put in place the measures that we need to put in place to guarantee our lives.
So those of us who think we might be heading back to Barbados or Jamaica when things get tough in our little beach house or something a mile or two inland, may find that that same property is not there in a couple of decades.
Because these islands, these small island nation states that we've been marooned to as a result of the transatlantic trafficking and kidnapping of enslaved African people, actually are heating. Because of global warming, there is this notion that if we go beyond 1.5 degrees of warming, a lot of those islands will just disappear within the next 20, 30 years. Okay, so those islands of the Caribbean, other small island nation states, it's not just about that, it's also about in Africa as well, where we are the ones who are contributing least to this crisis, but it is impacting us the most. And because of colonialism and the fact that we are being neo-colonized and we are being still denied access to our resources, we are not able to actually guard against some of these changes to the degree that we really need to be doing. So this is about preventing our own extinction. Let's be very clear. This is not about us turning up every year. Reparations, when do we want it? Now. It's not about that. It is about us being serious about stopping the harm today so that we can have even a tomorrow, so that we can actually implement those repairs, those visions that actually our ancestors had and that we are continuing through this intergenerational movement. And we need to get our people back on the level of where we need to be as global beings, as global thinkers, actors and doers that are the mothers and fathers of human civilization. But yet we're still operating with a very small mind that is not the mind of governance. It is not the mind of stewardship of planet Earth and our mother Africa, which is why other people are recolonizing it.
Right. And so, yes, the system part of the manganese has caused us to become very myopic, centered on our personal, not even collective survival. And as a result of that, we've seen certain behaviors begin to manifest in our communities. And that's part of what we want to address today. But in terms of the program for the Pan-African Reparations Rebellion Groundings this year, reparationsmarch.org has a program on it, and it will be updated later on with a bit more detail, just to let people know, if you didn't, that we're talking about operating across two sites, Max Roach Park and Windrush Square. Max Roach Park, 10 o'clock start. We are starting indoors at Windrush Square at 1 o'clock, and then we will have a libation outside at 2 o'clock. But we'll talk more about what we're doing indoors at the Black Cultural Archive in just a moment. And people who are emotionally wedded to marching will have an opportunity to march from Max Roach Park to Winra Square with a little bit of a detour, and that begins at 3:15 after we've had our customary 3-minute silence at both sites at 3 p.m. In honor and reverence to our great ancestors. So the fuller details of that program is on reparationsmarch.org. Fuller details of what Sister Esther's been talking about in terms of the rationale for a change in tactic and how we explain the focus that we have now on those 3 elements of holistic repair, which do not exclude, they actually include and build on the 5 principles of reparations
can I just
within international law.
Sure. Can I just say, Sister Jendayi, I don't want anyone to feel that because we as African people are talking about the need for environmental justice in terms of how we relate to our Mother Earth, the ecosystems that sustain all life, even in terms of ensuring that we have food and water free of pollution as being some white thing, or because of groups like Extinction Rebellion. It really isn't, and it's an insult. Because as African reparationists, our struggles against colonization were also had ecological dimensions. That is why people resisted land grabs and the way in which land was stolen to introduce plantations and monocropping, which today have resulted in this climate and ecological crisis. Okay? So the point is, in terms of the mindset that some indigenous Americans call Wetiko, Africans, in terms of Professor Marimba Ani refers to as Urugu, this literally incomplete being that began this age of desecration of Mother Earth, desecration of Mother Africa, desecration and despoilation and dispossession of the people, the commodification and commercialization and propertization of people, human beings. That mindset is what we have to repair, because it's that mindset that continues and that has resulted in where we are at. And many of us following that same Urugu mindset in our so-called economies, which is why we are also experiencing that social, civil, environmental, spiritual, and cultural death. That's what we're talking about.
Yes, and we're experiencing this dumbing down of our knowledge and pursuits of it. You know, I hear people talking about basking in the sun and the heat wave in the UK and how lovely the sun is, without making the connection between the Maangamizi and the fact that we have 40-degree temperatures in the UK right now, because of that historical lack of respect.
The research that come out by organizations like Greenpeace and others that have spoken about how we, the people, the non-white people, so-called, okay, are the ones that are most impacted by environmental racism and this so-called climate and ecological crisis, even here within the UK, Europe, North America, everywhere we are in the diaspora, and that you cannot tackle it without tackling colonialism and its legacies of racism, in particular anti-black racism and its specific form, Afrophobia. Well, they didn't say that in their report, but I'm just contextualizing it in that way. So the world is waking up to the fact that we were taken away from our living in harmony with Mother Earth, Mother Nature, not taking more than we needed, offering prayers. You know, the notion of reciprocity, we wouldn't take more from the earth than we needed for our survival. And then what happened was the introduction of capitalism, the Industrial Revolution, which was fueled by enslavement and colonialism, where then everything became a market. And many of us were forced to actually engage in that despoilation and that dispossession, not only of ourselves, but that ecocide and genocide of our own people. So the cognitive justice speaks to the knowledge systems that we use to liberate and emancipate ourselves, recognizing that the world is now waking up to the knowledge systems of all indigenous people, including African indigenous people who for centuries have been warning against this time that we find ourselves in. But we were called uncivilized, hedonistic, fetish, all these negative terms because we lived in harmony with nature and we knew how to command the sources of nature in our own favor in terms of our spiritual systems. That is what has been desecrated and tampered with, that we need to restore and repair.
Yes, so that leads us quite nicely into the three main questions I think that we need to address today, because there's two words you say there. There's two things really about us reminding ourselves that we are the original custodians of Nana Asasea, Mother Earth, okay? And we seem to have forgotten that. And you said something about the kind of drive to everything becoming a marketplace.
Yes,
right.
Capitalism, racial capitalism, to be specific.
Yes.
And what that does, the neoliberalism, and what that does to our human relations, what that does to our community building, where everything becomes about a price. And people now are more interested in making small money when they are literally losing the world.
Right. So it really takes me to the first question, which is actually the third question on the flyer. Because at 1 p.m. on Windrush Square on the 1st of Mosiah, we're going to have a masterclass facilitated by the University of Repair around cooperative economics. Can you just tell us what is the University of Repair and what is their role on the 1st of Mosiah?
Sure. So the University of Repair is an initiative that was born out of decolonizing the archives, and also is built. And we recognized that there was a need to build an educational institution that promoted educational repair or reparations, that was a vehicle that we could ground with our people using the methodology of Professor Walter Rodney of Groundings, which is a revolutionary methodology for engaging with the most oppressed in society around how we bring about the changes that we need to bring about. Anti-imperialist, it is about, pro-human and people's liberation. It is about living in harmony with actually the boundaries of Mother Earth and what Mother Earth provides, okay? So this University of Repair initiative was really born out of this collaboration, coming together of, Connie Bell from Decolonizing the Archives, Dr. Etienne Joseph, Professor Gus John, Professor Patricia Rodney, who is of the Walter Rodney Foundation and the wife of the late Professor Walter Rodney, and myself. And it is really about how we can create this method of education, but in grounding with our people, where they themselves become the agents of change, and that they, implement those changes that they need to implement on the basis of us, bringing about or prefiguring a new world, a new Africa, a new world, and new relations wherever we are, but emphasizing the role of the people. So that's the University of Repair. And the University of Repair is actually hosting this masterclass, building on actually a workshop that the University of Repair organized a few months ago in association with the Museum of London, looking at economic repairs, spatial justice, but also Ubuntu. How do we use Ubuntu in our own economics and economic planning, as an African humanistic principle and value that we feel we can better implement in our economic affairs. So that's the University of Repair.
just a question before we go on to the other two questions. The University of Repair, what, if any, relationship does it have to our co-founded structure, the International Network of Scholar Activists for African Reparations?
Okay, it's not part of the International Network of for African Reparations as the University of Repair, International Network of Scholars and Activists for African Reparations. However, individual members of the University of Repair are members of INASAR, the International Network of Scholars and Activists for African Reparations, such as Professor Gus John, who is actually our honorary chair as the International Network of Scholars and Activists for African Reparations, myself, and also Sister Connie Bell.
Okay, so
it's
Brother Daniel,
it's an autonomous institution that is coming out of our movement building, our international social movement building for African reparations. And it is influenced by earlier structures like INASAR, prior to INASAR, the African Reparations Transnational Community of Practice that I also co-founded, as I have co-founded INASAR and involved in the co-founding of the University of Repair.
Gotcha. I just wanted to introduce Brother Daniel Davidson in the chat, and he's the co-chair of the African Emancipation Day Reparations March Committee, and he's going to be posting various links and Instagram IDs because, you know, INASAR is on Instagram and so on, and he's going to be posting the link to the Stop the Maangamizi We Charge Genocide Ecocide petition, which is on change.org, and any other useful links that we kind of mention throughout this discourse here. So that masterclass is going to be 1 till 2:30. The masterclass on economic repairs
1:15 till 2:45.
Right, and it's going to be in the Black Cultural Archive.
Yes.
And then so it's limited spaces for people who want to attend, and they have to turn up first come first serve, right?
Yeah, and that masterclass is really looking at economic repairs. What is the meaning of economic repairs for the purposes of building the international social movement for African reparations, but in particular building the political economy of our movement for African reparations.
And I guess,
yeah, we felt it was important to, try and raise people's consciousness about the notion of economics, what it is, and to just, take it beyond the notion of just simply buying black and, consumption, us buying more things. That is not economics, okay?
Okay, and that kind of relates to, and does strongly relate to, this question around why the three co-organizers of this year's Pan-African Reparations Rebellion, that is the African Emancipation Day Reparations March Committee, the Stop the Maangamizi Campaign, and GARFO, the Global African Reparations Forum of London, why we have brought in this new traders policy for the 1st of Mosiah. But in answering that question, I think we need to go to the first question for you to more expand on what we mean by cooperative economics for building the political economy of reparations.
So, okay, let's break that down, if I may. So, cooperative economics. So those of us who are used to commemorating Kwanzaa will know that cooperative economics, or Ujamaa, is a principle, or one of those principles, to build and maintain, and this is how it's often spoken of, to build and maintain our own stores, shops and other businesses, to profit from them together. And this is often just reduced to sort of buy black campaigns. But actually, that definition really doesn't go far enough in terms of cooperative economics. Let's break down economy in terms of economics, right? Which is the combination of two Greek words. Oikos, meaning household, and nomos, meaning management. So then our economy, okay, is really then about how do we collectively manage the resources of our planetary home. the resources of Mother Earth. If we're talking about an African political economy, then the resources of Africa. And in this context, talking about the political economy of the international social movement for African reparations, in simple terms, it really speaks to the politics and economics of building, repairing, our communities, building our communities, advancing the building of our communities, and repairing and regenerating our communities in the context of the need to also stop the Mangamizi and how that's continuing to manifest, but also a worldwide climate and ecological crisis. And so what that means is that the old business models, which are based on an extractivist economy, just taking from Mother Earth, okay, without thinking there are no consequences, despite the impact on people and our planet, our Nana Asaseya, okay, is not really what we're talking about. And unfortunately, there's not enough education happening around the kind of businesses that we are engaging in, whether they are sustainable, whether they are actually providing for our people's needs, our basic needs. And even if we just look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs in terms of physiological needs, safety needs, love and belonging, esteem and self-actualization, you know, the basic rung of the needs, you know, air, food, water, shelter, sleep, clothing and reproduction. How are we able to meet our people's basic housing needs, their shelter needs, their needs for, you know, food that is edifying, and not, you know, soul destroying and giving them all kinds of illnesses and so forth. Our basic needs to reproduce ourselves, reproduce our communities, our African heritage communities, and the kind of politics and economics that we need to engage in and that will be deployed against us when we try and do that. And as I said, this cannot be based on how much we consume. But what are we producing? How are we able to sustain our children, our community members in employment, whether it's enterprise or what have you, in order to build our communities so they are not communities that are communities of social death? But these are truly African heritage communities premised on regenerating our values, our cultures, and building a world in our own image and likeness, or certainly us contributing to that. And therefore, what kind of professions that we need to be engaging in. So whatever profession that people are engaged in, there needs to be a recognition that those professions themselves have to be producing new curriculums. You know, it can't be just doing law or economics or engineering or, community development or even health practice outside of the notion of the connections between our environment and ourselves. So even in healthcare, there is a notion now of planetary health, that we are also, our health is also influenced by what's happening in nature. Okay, if you pollute the food system, the water system, it's going to have an impact on your health. But if our products and all our focus is just on consuming, but not looking at how do we then stop the harm and despoilation of that part of the earth that we have access to, that we call home, that we have stewardship over. Yeah, these are the kind of discussions. Even in terms of healthcare, how many of us, there was some research that was done recently coming out of the European Union saying that children who go to school now are divorced from nature. They don't know basic things about plants. Okay, so if we're talking about pharmaceuticals, okay, the pharmaceutical industrial complex, what is the knowledge that we need to have about the mother nature, the plants, okay, that are there, that we can actually develop healing remedies to cure the illnesses that we have acquired as a result of the Mangamizi? Why are we not actually encouraging more of our young people to go into these new emerging sciences, which are based on ancient knowledge, okay, that were considered to be, backward? Oh, that's not something you need to focus on. You need to focus on the conventional professions, but which actually have all been legitimized demonizing this system of extraction, exploitation, dispossession, ecocide, and genocide of peoples. So there's no profession that is exempt from it. And so that's why the cognitive justice is really, really important when we're thinking about the epistemologies of repair that we're using. And we often, and especially,
epistemology being the production of knowledge,
systems that we are using. And a lot of the time, we in our struggle, and I speak as an African reparationist, I see within our own movement, we use a lot of European knowledge to try and repair ourselves, even around what is the nature of the harm, what is the meaning of reparations, what is the kind of society that we are trying to build, what are the value systems, do we embrace capitalism from a reparationist perspective? No, we have to be about abolishing that. But a lot of what we are trying to do by way of business is actually propping up the system, but just simply trying to find a space within it and get more out of it, as opposed to looking at the system in its totality and what reparationists, great reparationists before us have known, and the kind of discourses that our people were even having in the 1990s, which we've fallen way back from because of the poor leadership, I would say, and the fact that we're not also using our minds to envision alternatives to this current system. We've actually kind of just become complicit in reinforcing it, and in that sense, just aping our colonizers and aping whiteness in terms of, well, this is how they live, so, this is what they have. Why can't we have the same too?
So there's a culture that's been developed there where in our African family events or whatever, we must have a buying and selling mechanism, facility, which is why we have changed our traders policy this year, focusing on essentials of health and education, and also stalls that represent cooperative or group economic initiatives, even as a fundraising thing, rather than the individuals that normally would occupy that space.
Thing about promotion of the cooperatives, because there's not enough of that. So when we're talking about cooperative economics, it is not what people bandy about as group economics. It is really about how are we developing cooperative enterprises where basically we are looking at, are we extracting, who is producing goods, at what cost, what is the distribution, what are the price, what are the profits that people are making, is it fair, is it in harmony, or is it a kind of another form of extractivism or so-called black capitalism? Okay, so these are all the things, and very few of those that traditionally have traded on the 1st of Mosiah have embraced cooperatives as a structure, as a legal form, because a cooperative is not a personal business. It's not a sole trader. It's based on cooperative principles and values. It involves people coming together to organize and pool their resources and share their skills and talents for the benefit of their community. And those resources get then replowed into the community. So there's a need for evolution of people's understanding, even around the kind of businesses that we require in our communities to help build the political economy of our movement of repair, which for us is about building the repaired African nation in a repaired, world. And in the UK context, we refer to the Ma'atu Buntu Jamas, the African heritage communities for national self-determination, which are self-repairing communities. So it's about showing that amongst ourselves, we're able to manage the resources of our Mother Earth. And that piece of Mother Earth that we might call home, that we have a connection to. Now, that is a huge problem for people who've been dispossessed of their connection to land, where we're reduced to being consumers of other people's production and labor. So these are the
Yes.
kind of conversations that we want to have and that we have been trying to have, because you speak about introducing a new policy. This policy has been 3 years in the making. From
Yes.
2019, in 2016, we introduced blocks. In 2019, we specifically introduced the Ma'atubuntu Jima, which is really about the political economy block for building the economy of our Matubuntu man in Ubuntu Dunia, but in particular, our UK satellite communities. And the idea about these blocks were to engage traders and other people interested in enterprise in what does this look like? How do you then need to transform your own business, your own knowledge, your own understanding to ensure that what you are doing is actually building cooperative economics? So that it's not just you personally and your family or whoever is a company director or, working with you benefits. But how then is that useful to our community? What are the kind of enterprises as a community we need? Yeah? What are the kind of things that we're lacking in? How are we projecting ourselves into being a free people where we're not dependent on the goods and services of others? Those are the kind of conversations.
Hence the prioritization. Thank you, of health and education stalls this year, and stalls that provide sustenance for protesters, demonstrators.
And I think you need...
let me just say, sis, before you go on, there are people in the chat who are refusing to overstand, who are refusing to engage with what's being said, and are committed to misunderstanding what's being said here.
Well,
we haven't got time for this.
No, Sister
We're not going to address anything more.
Look, let's not engage it. We know everything we do, and especially when we're trying to move our people forward, you always get that resistance. We have those who are counter-revolutionary within our own communities. This is a discussion for those who want to hear, okay? And I think what we need to talk about is some of the disgusting behavior that we have seen from people who feel the first of Mosiah should just be about trading. Yeah,
and their ability or their right to make money.
Desecrating this sacred day that was about the trading of our African humanity. And what we need to look at, because studies and research have been done on it, what is the psychological, spiritual legacy of being traded for centuries? And how is that still within us? That when we are engaging in a day of righteous protest and action, and when we say to our people, can we exercise some discipline around our buying and selling on the day, unless it is about sustaining life, what we essentially need? Especially when we can see the poverty indices of our people growing in the UK. Our children are more impoverished than they have ever been. The wealth gap is growing. So yet some of us just want to sell to our people. When our people don't have the resources and they rely on credit and getting themselves into debt to sustain a lifestyle that is a death style. Those are the conversations that we want to have. And what we have instead seen are people who insist that this day is just about them. It is a desecration.
And it's just a day, actually, and they don't do anything else the rest of the time.
And if you won't say it, I'm saying it. Whoever wants to engage with it can engage with it. Who doesn't want to engage with it can leave it alone. This is a desecration on one day. And the idea, the influence for this policy, from my perspective, is rooted in our reparations movements. And one of the people I have to credit here is one of my personal mentors, who's now an ancestor, Queen Mother Dorothy Benton Lewis, Nana Asase Ya Hima, Dorothy, Queen Mother Dorothy, as others would know her, former co-chair of INCOBRA, the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America, and also former co-chair of the International Affairs Commission, of which I recently became a co-chair in great honor of her work. And Queen Mother Dorothy, in 2006, when we were working together as reparationists transatlantically, there was this whole preparation around 2007, the bicentenary of the British Parliamentary Abolition of the Slave Trade Act. And Queen Mother Dorothy introduced a proposal which was 3 years abstinence from materialism and consumerism. And what she was advocating is that we engage in a material fast and conserve those resources to plow them back into community building, that we didn't buy things that we didn't need. We only bought things that were about sustaining our life because of the overconsumption as opposed to overproduction that goes on in our communities. And this was a sacred endeavor, a material fast. People don't have a problem with that on so-called Black Friday. They encourage us, boycott, don't buy anything. But when we do it on a day that is truly about the buying and selling, and when those who bought and sold us were actually rewarded for buying and selling us with financial compensation, it then becomes a problem. What is wrong with us?
Indeed, my sis. So that speaks into quite heavily this question around our new policy going forward, where we are prioritizing essential.
Sister Jendayi. We have been working with those, and in particular, Auntie Jean is one of them, who is a block coordinator. There was Brother Daniel, who are traders themselves, involved in small businesses, promoting Black businesses. We have been trying to dialogue with them for several years and say, you lead these groups, okay? Can we engage in a dialogue? Can you sustain this block beyond the 1st of Mosiah? Let's keep talking to each other, okay? We're not against Black businesses. We're not.
That's right.
Yeah. What the policy says is there are 364 other days of the year when you can do this. Okay?
Where you can buy a dashiki and a piece of jewelry.
Why can't we come together on this day in terms of showcasing, so you, even your businesses, tell us about your sustainability practices? You know, dialogue with the communities about how your products are made, where they're sourced from, how much the people who produce things actually get. Let's talk about these issues. That's what we've been saying to people. 3 years of preparation for this. And yet some people are the ones who, even last year when we were engaging in acts of rebellion, where we had to go and take the road, it was some of the traders who were being very insulting to you, Sister Jendayi. Talk the truth. And saying, oh, well, I've got my stall. You expect me to go on the road around the rebellion. So they obviously are coming to sell, some of them. They're not coming to be part of a rebellion and a day of action of our people.
Yes, let me come in there because, there have been occasions where I have been approached by traders incandescent with rage who have said to me, how dare I ask people to take to the road when they have paid for their stall on Windrush Square? And these sorts of things. And I do apologize partly for saying new. It's just that there's something you can read now that has gone out to all traders this year. And that's why I say new, but we have been building towards this since 2019.
And this is the work we've been trying to do with leading business people within our community. It's not been imposed. But let me say something more basic than that. This is a day of protest. How many other groups protest? Let's just talk about Holocaust Memorial Day for Jewish people. Do you see buying and selling of products at their events? How many? How many other groups who are seriously contesting power and fighting a liberation struggle want to bring the marketplace onto the battlefield with them?
Or even protesting austerity or Iraq war or
Ukraine war.
But
where do you see it? Apart from paraphernalia about what the protest is about, maybe books so people can elevate their consciousness, which is what we are promoting. Education. That is the motto of the African Emancipation Day Reparations March Committee. Education is preparation for reparations, but people don't want to do no education because they think they know it all. Okay? Everybody has to engage in the education. I educate myself every day. even though I'm
And I have to
recognized as
say,
being a leading person on reparations. But every day I have to be learning new things, new knowledges, to be able to cope with and move with the times and deal with the nature of the polycrisis that we face. It's not just climate and ecological, the crisis of militarism and war, the crisis of racial capitalism, the crisis around, you know, the inequality that we have amongst men and women, you know, sexism, chauvinism, the crisis of pseudo-nationalisms and racial chauvinisms, okay? The crisis of artificial intelligence.
Yes, it's a day of protest. It's not a day to sell your dashiki and your jewelry. It's not a day for you to take selfies to say, oh, I was there. It's not a day for you to use a backdrop to make your music video, okay, and all those types of things, because those exploitative things have happened in the past. And there is a wealth of information on stopthemaangamizi.com, wealth of information on reparationsmarch.org, and on social media of those same structures. And people are still asking questions where, you know, they haven't even made an effort to even visit those sites.
Yeah, because they want
we
to
have
be
on the homepage, hold on, we have a homepage, reparationsmarch.org, and we have taken time to tell you for the last 10 years, right, the key achievements and milestones that this international social movement have made, okay? And people are going in like they don't know anything because they can't be bothered, okay, to even go to the homepage of a website. And yet we think we are ready and we know what reparations is, and that we're ready to secure and build on whatever that is. So there's an education deficit, there's an effort deficit that we need to address. And most people that are involved in this movement, there's also an issue of staying power and resilience, because our ancestors didn't do something for a year or two and just go about their business, right? And decide, oh, we're not doing it this year. They never did that.
Absolutely.
We wouldn't be here if they did.
Absolutely. It's very simple. Look, on the 1st of Mosiah, there are different events and activities that are happening. What we're all co-organizing is not the only event and activities. There are other things happening on that day. And there are, I'm sure, opportunities where people can go and trade at those events if they're not happy with this policy that if people read it, I want someone to really read the policy. Can it be shared in the chat? Brother Daniel, share that policy in the chat and let someone seriously come and tell me what's wrong with it. Let someone seriously argue that it's reparatory for them to be selling more than essential services. You know, it's quite generous. And it's in keeping with the aims of the day. But if people are not happy with that, they are free to organize alternative events where they can trade, buy, sell, whatever, to their heart's content. If they feel that the strategy for Pan-African liberation is about buying and selling, it is not. And that shows me that people are very economically illiterate, because you speak to any economist, and I think we've got a couple on this chat, they will tell you that's not what economics are about, okay? And that's why we are focusing in terms of the masterclass on economic repairs. Yeah, because there's a lot of miseducation that is really about reinforcing so-called black capitalism, which I don't actually believe exists. I think we have wannabe black capitalists, okay? Because the system of white power, okay, and white extraction and Chinese and everybody else, extraction of our resources and management of the resources that we have a stewardship over is what we're seeing. Okay, but that's what gets promoted as black power and black success. Okay, and we need to actually, that's why we're organizing groundings, so we can have a serious, critical dialogue and groundings with each other around this. Let us really explore these things. Look at the works of economists like Sandy Darity and others. They've done a lot of work in America around narrowing the wealth gap. And they have a wonderful document, which I'll try and find, on the 10 myths around sort of, you know, black buying power, in its ability to close the racial wealth gap. And they go into a lot of the common ideas that we hear bandied out there, which are actually propaganda, which reinforce imperialism, racial capitalism, and force us to think that we cannot change the system, that we have to just try and carve out a space to operate within the status quo as it is. Reparations is a revolutionary idea. It's a revolutionary movement. It's about stopping the harm. It's about effecting guarantees of non-repetition. And it is about systemic change, including as many reparationists who were heads of government in the 70s and 80s were advocating for the reform of or a new international economic order. Go back and check out what that work was about. And many of them got assassinated, and, you know, and the liberation struggles got, you know, rolled back, and then the introduction of more debt and IMF and World Bank policies that are still strangling our nations today. We want to be free of it. And no small trader can dare say that what they are offering is liberation for our whole people, our whole nation. Let us be honest with ourselves, and not because of some small self-interest want to now think that we can make that self-interest and actually displace the legitimate interests of our collective and our group.
Yeah. And let's be honest, it's not really just about communication this year. It's about the mindset that's driven us, not just on the 1st of Mosiah, to have this buying and selling mentality and practice and culture within African family
There's nothing
events.
wrong with that in African family events. I don't want people to think that we're opposed to that. This day is not an event.
That this would also do that.
No, this day is not an event. It is a protest. It's always been organized like that from 2014. Even though it was organized then by Rastafari Movement UK. The theme on that day, yes, there was in the town hall some stalls or what have you, but the essence of the day was about making a demand, okay? It wasn't about, well, we just need to be selling to our people. We need to have discipline. How can we be respected as a nation of people if we don't respect ourselves? And we are acting as if we have no discipline. We have no order. We have no stability. We don't know how to discern what activities we should do when and where and how. I'm tired of being disrespected as an African, and I'm tired of the tomfoolery that's going on in our community under the guise of black consciousness. I'm tired of it.
Indeed, my sis. And I would invite people in these final minutes, if they have a question that they would like to ask. I'm just looking at some of the comments. You see, we are working with people in terms of organizing this, the 3 structures. You know, we're still working with people who are committed to doing this, and they are far and few between. And what that means is that you don't have the capacity to lead in the way that you would like to. There are people that are doing other areas of work all throughout the year, not just planning for the 1st of Mosiah. So if people feel that there is a lack of communication and so on, then they need to be part of a movement which is part of getting that message out, being part of a rebellion, being part of organizing, and seeing themselves as being protesters and participants in a demonstration, participants in an international social movement, and therefore be asking themselves, what can I do to add value?
Can we make sure, I don't know if the policy is on the website. Can it please be on the website? Because I think this is a conversation piece. And I can tell you, as a reparationist who works internationally, this is being laughed at. It really is, because this is not the discussion happening in the movement anywhere else in the world. Yes. Certainly not in Africa, our homeland. Okay, where people are even struggling in some parts to get basic clean water, electricity, basic services. And as the video that you were shown that was produced by Ubuntu Dunia TV, and that we had our young son and brother Kobina do the voiceover for, you saw the way in which our people are resisting in terms of the Pan-African liberation struggle. There's no Pan-African liberation struggle without reparations, and there's no effecting and securing of reparations without Pan-African liberation struggle.
And that is not one day's work.
And so the point is that we have to tell our people the truth, and we have to stop giving mixed messages. Some people won't like it. I thank you. It doesn't, you know, I thank you for your critique. It's fine to disagree. This is what we call the iron sharpening the iron. It's not a problem. But let us see, in terms of when we look back on this time, I know who will be counted in history. And in terms of what they've stood for, because we've always had collaborators and always had people who just saw the world in a small, myopic way, who actually held back progress, and were often the ones who ended up being the counter-revolutionaries. Because when you wanted those who wanted just abolish the system, they would be the ones, because they had a little privileged place in the house, or they could carve out some little earnings, that they would be the ones who often went uninformed or prevented that struggle. So who are we in history? And what role are we playing? I know what stand of history I'm standing on. I think that's a question we all have to ask ourselves, and go and study. If you're a business person, study the economic history of African business. Study the economic theories of all of our liberators. Walter Rodney, Amilcar Cabral, many others. Study what they were trying to do. Kwame Nkrumah, in terms of neo-colonialism being the last stage of imperialism and what that meant. Marcus Garvey, we can even study Marcus Garvey critically. Okay, because he often gets heralded in terms of championing black businesses. But, you know, we need to look again at the standard narratives around what Marcus Mosiah Garvey and other Garveyists actually promoted. But whatever it is, the day is about that. It is about the groundings with our people. Groundings are a revolutionary praxis. So it's not saying you can't have a dissenting view. Of course you can. We're not dictators. But we reserve the right to disagree, and we reserve the right to say why, and we reserve the right to say in our people's long-term interests, this is a way that we feel we should go. But it's up to you which path that you choose. But I'm just, and looking back, when we say, what did this day achieve? It's not going to be recorded as the day that promoted black business. That's not what the 1st of Mosiah is about. And I think one of the biggest harms that was done is on, I think it was the year 2020, when there was the introduction of Black Pound Day on the same day as the 1st of Mosiah. And we had dialogues with those who initiated it. I personally contacted Brother Swiss, who I had known before from being involved with a group called Kasoma that was initiated by Brother Akala, and tried to have this dialogue with him around, can we find a way to still support what you're trying to do, but not in a way that it detracts from the purpose of the 1st of Mosiah. Well, I'm not going to tell you what that conversation was about, or how it went on, but I can tell you that I reached out to my brother. Okay, and his view was this was something that he felt he wanted to do. He felt he was quite dismissive, to be quite honest with you, of the movement, the ISMA, the International Social Movement for African Reparations. He felt that this was old style, it hadn't succeeded or achieved anything, and this was now the new lick, you know, the new flavor. If I'm telling a lie, brother, if anyone's listening, you have the right to reply. I'm trying to keep it as diplomatic and as polite as I can keep it, but we have been constantly reaching out to our people for dialogue around, how can we still, you know, take on board what you're trying to promote? But when people are not willing for that, then you see that they go and do their own thing. So let no one say that we have just imposed this. And actually, leadership is collective. Don't look at us. Look at what those of you who should have been part of a block, supporting the block coordinators to actually do this work, why you didn't do it. Let's look at that. Let's look at that. Stop pointing the finger at other people and take responsibility for your creations, your co-creations, or your lack of creation.
Truly. So on that note, we're going to draw to a close now. Just to remind you, reparationsmarch.org, which is in the chat, has a summary of the key seminal achievements of this international social movement for African reparations over the last 10 years on the homepage. Also, links within those things that take you to a deeper understanding of what these things have achieved, because unfortunately it feels like most of our community are not interested in knowing what's going on, learning, but they just want to come out for a day, and we're trying to say the day is in context of what we do the other 364 days of the year. So the program is also on reparationsmarch.org, operated on 2 sites, Max Roach Park and Windrush Square. The University of Repair Masterclass for Cooperative Economics for Building a Political Economy of Reparations.
People need to book to attend, by the way, because there are limited spaces. Decolonizing the Archives website is where you can book to attend that masterclass.
Okay. And that is inside the Black Cultural Archive at 1 p.m.
1:15 until 2:45. The program is also on the StopTheMangamizi.com website. And yes, the day is about groundings. I encourage people, can we put a link to the chat, in the chat, Brother Daniel, the work of Professor Jared Ball, who talks about researches the myth of black buying power and how this ends up reinforcing literally white access to black markets, okay? Whether it's our own cultural products or what have you, and reinforcing racial capitalism. Please put that in the chat. Let's deal with some of the knowledge and expertise that our liberation fighters today are engaged in. And when people have engaged with some of this, then let's come back and talk about it.
Let's raise the levels, and if it's not in this chat, we'll make sure we put something up on Reparations March and Stop Mangamizi Instagram accounts. 10 o'clock, Max Roach Park. 2 p.m. we start at Windrush Square, but those who want to assist in setting up between 10 and 12 on Windrush Square, you are most welcome. It's not just about being a protester. This is none of us are doing this just for ourselves. We're all doing this for each other. When Max Roach Park finishes its program after the 3-minute silence in honor of our ancestors at 3 o'clock, which will happen in both places, they will then facilitate a march led by drummers and young people down to Windrush Square after a little detour. And so there's going to be a youth debate. We're hoping to hear from some of the independent African schools. We're hoping to hear internationalist messages around the wider dimensions of the ISMAR. We're hoping to engage in edutainment that is consistent with the theme of the Windrush Square stage, which is about building Ma'at Ubuntu Man in Ubuntu Dunia. Sis, just give us 1 minute explanation of that, please, again, for those who may have just joined.
Basically, Ma'at Ubuntu Man is a pan-African union of communities premised on Ma'at and Ubuntu. Okay, that is not a United States of Africa. It's not about uniting those borders of the 1884-1885 Berlin Conference, okay, which separate indigenous African ethnicity and nationality from each other. It is about an Africa based on African notions of governance, our value system, our cult, the best of what we have produced. Just as democracy is supposed to be the best of what has come out of Greece and Rome, that they've never achieved. It's an ethical ideal, right? And then Ubuntu Dunia is an Nguni word for basically a multipolar world of global justice that is that Matubuntu man has to exist in, because otherwise all the other nations are just going to come and recolonize us, take over capture all the lands, the people. We're going to, you know, literally go back into modern day slavery. That's really what we're seeing. That was we saw that with Libya in terms of Africans on auction blocks. That's what we're talking about here. So it's a Matubuntu man in Ubuntu Dunia. It is our strategic goal, just like for a Jewish person or a Palestinian, the strategic goal of their repair struggles, okay? Also, national struggles is in a nation state. Palestine, Israel.
Yes. So anything less, not just about more inclusion, more equality, more comfort under the system of white supremacy.
We cannot have power. Our lives cannot matter if our homeland is still being enslaved and colonized. How can that be?
And it's not, and it's not about trying to create a nice little vacuum of African family activity where you don't have to engage white people should you choose to remain in the UK. It's not about that either. So the theme for the Windsor Square stage relates to that nation building. So we're asking for all contributions to address the question of what does Africa and her diaspora need to do to secure holistic reparations, as in planet repairs, which is the combination of reparatory justice, environmental justice, and cognitive justice.
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to be asking contributors about what their organizations have been doing and the key successes they've made. We're going to be asking them about policy development in relation to what our nation building strategic goal is. Okay, so we're not looking for people to pump their fists and chant rhetoric on the day. So if you're coming up on the stage, come proper.
Can I also recommend another piece of reading? Education is Preparation for Reparations. If you are about making money or business, enterprise, you should be experts in this field. You should know the theories, the ideas, the alternative theories that are being put out there around repair and how that connects to repair. What we get wrong about closing the racial wealth gap, I recommend people to read it. It's by William Darity Jr., Derek Hamilton, and many others. And it's been produced by the Samuel Dubois Cook Center on Social Equity. And I think it's got 10 myths, basically, about why there is increasing wealth gap. And what they point out is just consuming your way out of poverty does not actually reduce the racial wealth gap. That intergenerational in poverty, it is so entrenched and so deep that encouraging our people to just buy more things is actually adding to it, especially when they have to get themselves in debt to sustain a lifestyle that their own wages do not afford for. So let us really examine what we're doing. And I'm sorry, those of us that want to come and consume and buy on the day, I remember once in Hugh Thomas's book on slavery, if there were no buyers, there'd be no sellers, okay? So those that feel that this day is then just about what you can come and buy, you are also part of the problem, okay? Because what it ends up doing, as I said, it's counter-revolutionary, because the day was always focused on revolutionary ends. And then now people want to make it about what we can buy and sell, you know, what you know, meeting up with old family or friends or what have you, the feel-good factor, which is why people feel it's acceptable to just turn up on one day or only start engaging when it's around how can I personally have a stall or something on that one day. But the rest of the year, they're not interested in coming to no meetings. They don't come and contact anybody. They don't invite you or anybody, you know, who can speak to some of these issues. Will come and share this with our, you know, come and then have a conversation with us in our group. Where's that happening? How often is that happening? It must stop, because our movement is becoming a joke. I'm saying this because I came into the movement off of the back of what was happening in the 90s. You check out, go into the Bernie Grant archives and look in the archives of the movement, the discussions on reparations in the 90s. These are the things they were talking about. Why is it we have, there's been hardly any progress, and it's almost like we're talking a foreign language to people, because people have dropped the ball and you have been misled. And some of us are not of the misleadership class, and whether you like me or you don't like me, I'm going to say it as it is. Because this is not a joke, and I've had people who I've worked with assassinated on this path. My own life threatened with assassination, and I won't say when or how. So this is not a joke.
Or a day out. Right. Well, I want to thank you, Sister Esther Stanford-Xosei, spokesperson for the African Emancipation Day Reparations March Committee. While I'm thanking you, sis, the name that you mentioned, if you could put it in the chat, that would be useful.
Which one? Which name? the report?
Dartha. Dartha.
Oh, Dorothy.
Dorothy.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah. All right, I'll try and type it. What?
So we hope to see you on the 1st of Mosiah and the day after and the day after that. We are still in need of stewards. When we recruit stewards, Brother Daniel trains them and orientates them towards the purpose not only of the day but of the wider movement. And so it's not about turning up on the day and putting on a high-vis jacket. We have started our training from, I think, April this year, and have many, and all of them have been online, so you don't even have to leave your house. And so, this is one of the ways that you can begin to make a contribution and begin to understand how this day, the 1st of Mosiah, which is not a celebration of emancipation, because that, just like European civilization, is something yet to be achieved. Okay, and so it's one of the ways that you can make a contribution and then find your place outside of the 1st of Mosiah as a campaigner and an activist through other means. And we have committed, Brother Daniel and Sister Esther and all of us of the 3 organizing structures, Garful, Stop the Mangamizi and the March Committee, to having a follow-up day, not about evaluation and how the day went, but for those who are serious about playing a role in this movement, this Pan-African reparations, international social movement for African reparations, then we will engage on that day, and we can signpost you to where you can be of assistance, because we have the Global African Reparations Forum of London, who have been doing stuff in Brixton once a month in Brixton Market, the Brixton Jam. They have been on this Instagram live, and there's stuff that you could contribute to there. If you're a resident in Lambeth and Islington, there are things that you can make a contribution to. If you are interested in collecting more signatures and doing more outreach on behalf of the Stop the Mangamizi campaign, that's another vehicle. There are other things that we are involved in, not just in London, outside of London and outside of the UK, that you can contribute to. And if you would please visit the Reparations March website and make a contribution to the costs involved in putting on this day of protest this year, that would be welcome as well. So I want to thank all of you that have tuned in today, and apologies for the technicals earlier on and we had to restart. Thanks to Sister Esther for contributing today and giving us more clarity on those 3 questions about what we mean by cooperative economics for building a political economy for reparations, and linking that to the kind of traders policy that we have been growing and building on for the last 3 years and have published this year. And to remind you about the University of Repair booking masterclass on cooperative economics on the 1st of Mosiah at Black Cultural Archive at 1:15, where you can go on to Decolonizing the Archive website to book your place, because places are very limited, but I'm sure it will be a very, 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 very useful and elevating workshop that you can go away and build on. So thanks each and every one. Sister Esther, last word to you, my sis.
Giving thanks for everybody and all of your comments, truly, even if they were contrary, it's fine. It's fine. You know, this is part of the territory when you are in any type of leadership. And what we have to do, and I'm saying this as co-organizers, anybody who is in a leadership role within reparations, we have to do better at helping our people to rediscover these truths. We have to do better. And if the consciousness is low, we have to take collective responsibility for that. You know that that's what I've been saying, because I feel it's an indictment of the work that we've been trying to do. Yeah. So we have to redouble our efforts at trying to do the work that we do better. And not everyone will get it. You know, just like Marcus Garvey said, not everyone we want to go back to Africa. There won't be any use there. Not everyone is going to be useful in terms of the post-reparations world order. But, you know, it's up to you whether you want to sink or swim.
They will benefit from it, though. They will benefit.
They might benefit from it, but maybe not if they are actually putting blocks in the way to prevent the collective gains from truly coming because of whatever reason. So, again, you know, everyone has to be accountable to their ancestors, to their lineage, and to their posterity. I'm trying to be accountable to mine and to serve our community in the best way that I know how. I just really kind of encourage everyone else to continue to do the same, to be the best of who we actually are born to be, giving thanks.
Giving thanks, and we thank the divine creator. We thank our indomitable ancestors for being within us and around us today, giving us spiritual clarity, giving us strength, giving us overstanding, giving us guidance and protection, and we ask for that to continue on this divine mission of securing reparatory justice. Thank you all, and see you very, very soon in London. We'll go well, walk safe, and be good to each other. Ashe.
Sure.